I really don't think that this is anywhere within the definition of what a conflict of interest has ever been interpreted to mean in English law. I mean, I think the leader of the opposition wants to now adopt an elastic concept of what conflicts of interest are so that he can stick them on to the government at any time that he wants us to change course, because he takes the view that it's in his party political interest to try and do that at this time. Let's be very clear. We have advice in respect of what is happening in this inquiry and what could happen in other inquiries, and the fact that we have a law that is 150 years old.
That advice is coming from your lawyer at the inquiry, though.
Okay, so that advice is coming, you're absolutely right, from the former leader of the GSD, who was Chief Minister of Gibraltar for 16 years.
He's your lawyer at the inquiry.
Who has experience of this inquiry and of previous inquiries involving the former Chief Justice of Gibraltar, etc., an inquiry that he convened, now an inquiry that I convened. This is not about anything of substance in this inquiry. This is about procedure in this inquiry and in future inquiries. It's simply about procedures. Any rights or obligations which have been acquired or incurred by anybody in respect of this inquiry continue going forward. And this law, which is so criticized in the manner of its moving and indeed in the substance, in the context of people not realizing what it is that this law is really about, is a law that modelizes Gibraltar law and brings it into the 21st century from the 19th century. That's a very good thing. It's a very positive move. It's good for this inquiry. It's good for the party that has sought the convocation of this inquiry, the former commissioner, Mr. McGrail. And it's good for all of Gibraltar because this gives more powers to a chairman. So I don't see that there is any legitimacy whatsoever in any of the arguments being put. But what I also think is particularly shocking is that this is playing out on the airwaves instead of in Parliament. We haven't yet had the first and second reading of the bill, where the government will put in Parliament in detail, going through all of the clauses, what each of the clauses does. So this is perfectly normal passage for a bill that is certified as urgent, and yet everything that the government does now, and particularly in the context of this inquiry, is being made the subject of a political international witch hunt and persecution, not just by the opposition, but by lawyers representing Mr. McGrail, who are going on social media, attacking the government internationally, leading to that being reported in the international press and by international bodies of repute like Transparency International, which are linked to Mr. McGrail's lawyers. All of this to attack the credibility of the government, because the government's views, which will be clear in the context of the inquiry, were that we had lost confidence in Mr. McGrail, and just in order to try and somehow obfuscate that and put a smokescreen around that, everything that we do, even the modernization of Gibraltar law and taking an act that is 150 years old and making it a modern act adopted by the new Labour government in the United Kingdom, is vilified and attacked as if it were the most horrific anti-rule of law action by the most horrific anti-democratic government in the world, when what you have is a government that deeply respects the rule of law, has ensured that it has acted properly at all times, as will be seen in the context of 2020, when the facts that led to Mr. McGrail's early retirement are analysed and put in the cold light of day by the inquiry, and now also.
Chief Minister, once the legislation is passed, you could always argue as to the relevance of evidence you don't want disclosed. And as long as that possibility is there, then the opposition is right. You should keep the legislation back for an inquiry in which you're not involved, for justice to be seen to be done.
Let's be very clear, Christine. Let's be very, very clear. Fabian Picardo has spent 30 years in public life. I've spent 32 years as a lawyer. My reputation matters hugely to me, right? Because that's what I trade in, right? I have worked very hard to be an honest man. Every day I have come to this office as Chief Minister of Gibraltar. I will demonstrate that I acted properly in that inquiry when the inquiry sits. But the people of Gibraltar have made a judgment now 4 times, not once, by luck, but 4 times, that I should be the person to determine what is or is not in the public interest of Gibraltar without ousting the court's opportunity to review that. I can say that something's in the public interest and the court can review that and decide that I got it wrong, because we don't live in a dictatorship. We are divided into three types of powers: the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. But people have decided I should make decisions about what's in the public interest. If I have to make a decision that some evidence should not be disclosed in the public interest, that is not, and it never has been in my mind, Fabian Picardo's interest, the GSLP's interest, or my interest in staying for one day longer in the chair of Chief Minister. It will be in the interest of Gibraltar. That means Ian McGrail, Keith Asopaldi, Charles Gomez, Christine Podesta, Fabian Picardo, and all of our children. That decision, if I have to make it, will be in the public interest of Gibraltar, not of Fabian Picardo. And then it will be a decision, because if you read the inquiries, the new inquiries bill and what it does, it will not stop and will not be designed to stop Peter Openshaw, as chairman of this inquiry, from seeing that evidence. Adam Wagner and all of Mr. Gomez's partners in representing Mr. McGrail, in analysing and making submissions about that information, and the ruling being able to deal with that information. So the inquiry is not going to be affected. What people might be able to hear or see, because the inquiry might have to go in camera in some occasions, might be restricted. Of course, that law is there for that reason, but not because they might see something uncomfortable about Fabian Picardo. I am very relaxed about absolutely everything Fabian Picardo has ever done the day he came through that door on the 9th of December 2011 until today should be analysed in the cold light of day by any tribunal, and to be determined to be or not to be an act which is in keeping with good government rules or not keeping with good government rules. So I guarantee you, if I have to use any power under the new Inquiries Act in the public interest to restrict information from being in the public interest, it'll be in your interest and your children's interest and the interest of Ian McGrail and his children as much as it will be in the interest of my children. But it will not be, it will never even cross my mind that it should be in my personal interest, and it will not oust the inquiry's ability to look at that evidence, even though it might oust the ability to share that information with the world or with the public in Gibraltar. That's what that power is about. Let's be very clear. Don't allow yourself and your viewers to be led up the garden path of believing that this has given me any power to act in my personal best interest. I've already said so many times that I'm going hoarse that I will not be seeking election again. I have no party political interest left. I have given and give every day the best of me, and I've left a lot of me along the way to do the right thing for Gibraltar. And I'll be damned if any leader of the opposition seeking his own party political best interest is going to try and tarnish what we're doing in the interest of Gibraltar, because there's one thing that Keith Asopaldi wants that I certainly don't want. He wants to be Chief Minister after the next general election. And everything he is doing and everything he is saying is not designed to make a better law, to make a better inquiry, to ensure the integrity of the inquiry. It's designed to have Keith Asopaldi, at last, after so many failed attempts, I think 4 or 5 failed attempts, made Chief Minister of Gibraltar. And what I am doing is defending the public interest of Gibraltar with no regard whatsoever to the interest of Fabian Picardo, as you would expect. And that's why people have elected me 4 times to make those decisions if I have to make them.